Well, it's indeed my great privilege for me to introduce the special guests, and many of them are my great friends. And as a student of financial security markets, I'm always excited about talking. My student knows this, right? Talking about banking. And I also stand in awe when I talk about the Federal Reserve and some of these large banks that is running our country. And I always think to myself that, wow, there must be something different if men of faith are actually in charge of these organizations. They are so complex. And I always want to see, what the difference is. And of course, there are a lot of news on the papers these days and on TV about what's going on in the particular financial services banking world. So we have a lot of opportunity tonight, this afternoon, I should say, that at the end of the program that you will have a chance to ask questions to our panelists. Let me start with Sam Golden. Sam is our moderator today, and he is a man of great character, strong faith, and immense knowledge. In fact, without Sam, this absolutely would not have happened.
Thank you.
So thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
And Sam is the co-CEO of the financial services practice of the global consultancy Alvarez & Marsal. Sam spent many years with the comptroller of the currency of the United States Treasury Department, which is a fantastic organization, and he served as the acting comptroller as well as his first ombudsman, and among many other leadership roles. Andrew Moy is the executive vice president of Wells Fargo Global Banking Group and is Eastern Division manager, a territory that stretches from New York City all the way to Houston. It's a very big territory. I know Andrew, since we both served on the same church board many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. What amazes me is that Andrew never seems to have aged, although I have. And he is able to balance work and family, given all his responsibilities, and church, and work, and the blessings of 6 kids.
7.
7 kids.
Yeah.
Stand corrected.
Bless you.
I really appreciate him coming all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina, to participate in this event, especially in view of what's going on with Wells Fargo and Charlotte. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, Paul Murphy is the chairman and CEO of Cadence Bank, a Houston-based banking corporation with nearly $10 billion in assets. Before Cadence, Paul served as the CEO of Amegy Bank, which he co-founded in 1990. And Paul began his banking career in 1981 at Allied Bank of Texas and has served on many, many corporate and civil boards, including the Houston Endowment, the Children's Museum, and the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas in Houston. And Darren Paschal is the senior vice president and head of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas in Houston. Well, as I mentioned to some of you, that just hearing the name Federal Reserve being mentioned gave me a sense of awe, particularly as a student of financial markets, let alone being able to actually meet someone who runs of these district banks. So I'm very blessed, and you are too. So I count it a blessing to actually meet him several months ago. And Darren joined the Federal Reserve back in 1989 and has held numerous staff and management positions. He is active in the Houston community, serves on numerous boards, including the Central Houston Board of Directors and the Buffalo Bio Partnership Board of Directors. Last but not least, my good friend Pin Tai. He's the president and to be CEO tomorrow of Cathay Bank, and one of the largest U.S. financial institutions that have a special focus on the Asian community. Founded in 1962 in L.A., Cathay Bank has since expanded beyond the United States and now manages over $13 billion in assets. Pin joined Cathay in New York in 1999 after a successful banking career in Hong Kong and now oversees the bank's global operations from Los Angeles. And Pin is a strong Christian who never shies away from opportunities where he can testify for the gospel. Despite his impossible busy schedule, when I wrote him about this opportunity, he immediately says that absolutely, he's never too busy to honor God. So I'm very blessed to have him. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to our distinguished panel.
It's a privilege to be with you this afternoon. I can honestly say that being in this room without having tears in my eyes is something that I'm not accustomed to. Both of my lovely daughters were married here in the Beeland Chapel, and I walked down that aisle with tears in my eyes as I gave away my 2 daughters. The setting is obviously very different today. We can't think of a better time than to focus on this most topical issue of ethics in leadership. There's nothing magic about any of us up here. We bleed red, we have heart, but quite honestly, doing the right thing is what drives each of us and has driven each of us for many, many years. I'm simply the moderator. The panel are four very, very distinguished men who are willing to give of themselves today. One often believes that leadership is something that you are endowed with at birth. There are others that believe that there are aspects of it that are learned. I espouse the philosophy that leadership is a choice, that you choose to make a difference in the lives of men and women as you walk your daily walk, because what you do is what matters, what you say has fluff to it. And with that, we're going to turn to each of the panelists. They're going to have some brief opening remarks, and then we will get to some prepared comments, and then most importantly, this is your forum. We will afford you the opportunity to ask questions from the floor as we get toward the end. So Andrew, why don't you kick us off,
All right,
please?
thanks. So first of all, it is really a privilege and an honor and a blessing to be here, given the fact that I'm sure all of you have heard in the news all that Wells Fargo is going through today. And so I can say that I'm exercising my faith in the Lord by being here. Otherwise, it's a real challenging time, and I'm prepared to and want to give you a little bit of insight, being on the ground in Wells Fargo during this pretty tumultuous time. I've been with the bank for 24 years, back when Wells was just a California bank. The year I joined, that was the year Warren Buffett became a shareholder. And so it's been a crazy evolution in seeing the bank grow over the years to now see the dogfight, probably the biggest challenge that I've seen the bank be in over the 24 years I've been there. So anyways, I'm glad to be here. I'm really passionate about leadership, but what strikes me as the real reason why I'm here is not only for my passion for leadership, but being able to marry my passion there with work, but most importantly, my passion and faith in the Lord. I am a lover of Jesus above being a banker, above being a dad of 7 kids. And so I hope to be able to share all that and that in my heart, with all of you as we go through this today. So that's it. Yep.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, I also would like to say how pleased I am to be invited and included in this event today, and what a pleasure it is to have some time with you all. I was sharing with Darren that some of this is a little intimidating to me. You see, I'm an Episcopalian, and they didn't teach us how to witness, okay? That's
never too late.
Like a little bit outside of
You can join our church, Paul.
we evangelize. It's a little different. We're kind of discreet about it, I guess you might say. But I think we've got a bunch of great questions and a lot of good topics. And so with that, I'll just say that as I first thought about this, talking about my faith and not having a lot of practice with that it just, sort of came back to me about how fortunate we are to have the grace of God. And how many other religions just don't understand what we have and the blessings that come with that. And so that's what I kind of wrap myself up in every day. But Darren.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. Well, good afternoon, and my name is Darren Peschel, and I also want to thank HBU and Sam for the kind invitation to be here today. Truly honored to be here and impressed you would come indoors today on such a beautiful, God-given day today. I'm in even worse shape than Paul. I was an Air Force brat growing up, and when we went to church, it was either Catholic or Protestant, so we didn't even have the denominations. But clearly, faith was very important in my upbringing in the entire military tradition. And so I'm so pleased to be here. A little bit about the Federal Reserve, just to level set, because there's a lot of misconceptions about the Fed. So we are our nation's central bank. We're actually our nation's third central bank. The first two failed to take. And we think the reason the Federal Reserve has been successful is that we are a decentralized central bank. So this whole debate that is raging right now of Wall Street versus Main Street was happening over a century ago. And Congress seemingly came together and did something they can't do today, and that is compromise. So we're a decentralized structure. We have the Board of Governors in Washington, which is a public office, and then we have the 12 districts, and technically we're private. And so what you have there is the marriage where we represent all the geographic interests. So here, as a member of our Houston office, I make sure that we represent the interest of Houston and our region to Dallas, which gets translated up to Washington. And I look forward to talking a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Darren. Ben?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Tin Tai. I'm really honored and humble to be invited by Ernest to here to share some of my experience and faith in God. In my career, I can see clearly God's guidance all the way, from day one until now. I never dreamed that I'll be a CEO and president of a bank in my whole career, and I think this is really given to me by God, to serve and to lead an organization. And I would like to share that I'm really blessed because we do have quite a lot of Christians in our bank, actually some department head, and some of them are committed to pray for me. Frequently. So I'm really truly blessed. And we do have an office here in Houston and also another office in Dallas. So I'm passionate to be a banker because as a banker, you can really help our customer, help our community to grow by provide the financial resource, the advice, the product and service that can help them to fulfill their financial dream. And our philosophy is really to understand the customer's need and then try to guide them, help them so that they can accomplish their goal ethically, right? We don't do hard sell, right? So we try to understand the customer's need and help them. So I'm really happy to be here to share some of my experience and hopefully we can challenge each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Penn. Well, let's get rolling. Let's have a really good time for the next 50 minutes or so. There are few industries on this earth that are any more highly regulated than insured depositories, banks. But despite a whole array of regulatory framework, laws, rules, regulation, Dodd-Frank, what happens? You go through times of turmoil. You have scandalous situations that transpire, like the Bernie Madoff situation, and the complete meltdown where we almost lost it all in the 2008-2009 horizon. I'd like to get your perspective, if you would, on despite all of these kinds of situations, with the extraordinary overlay of regulation, why is that not enough to prevent some of these incredible upheavals that we've had? Andrew.
Well, I guess I can speak firsthand in terms of what we're going through today at Wells Fargo. I would say from a regulatory perspective, before any of this happened, the business over the last 5 years has changed dramatically in terms of the amount of oversight, the amount of just KYC, which is know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering type of compliance work that we have to do as bankers to ensure that our customers are not terrorists, that our customers are not laundering money. So the business, at least from my perspective, has transformed tremendously over the last 5 years in terms of where an individual banker spends their time. And it has changed. Probably half our time now is spent on compliance. But even with all of that, we still have situations like what Wells Fargo is going through today. And I could say it's been painful to watch, but when you look at what's going on with Wells, I would say there's been a breakdown in a couple things. One is a breakdown in leadership. But when you say leadership, what is that John Stumpf? Is that Kerry Tolstead? Who is that? When you look at our values that form the foundation of our company, there are two things that really stand out. One is leadership, and two is doing what's right for the customer. When we talk about leadership, the call, the value is that every single employee, which we call team member, that comes into the office every day is a leader. And it's their duty, their obligation to make the right decision in terms of how you conduct yourself, the decisions you make that fall in line with what is right for the customer. The second value is doing what's right for the customer. And so when this whole situation blows up, that regulatory action didn't catch, didn't prevent, that it is so contradictory to the fabric of, at least from Wells Fargo, in terms of the values that I hold accustomed to for the 24 years I've been with the bank, and it hurts. And so when you think about, there's a breakdown in leadership at all levels. So even the individual employee, the branch manager, the manager of the manager, to allow such a situation to occur for so long, and to prevent the actual stop of the situation. And so one, breakdown in leadership, but two, a breakdown in, I would say, internal controls. Mm-hmm. So will regulation fix that? To me, I don't think so. But you have to take internal controls, self-auditing, self-identifying issues much more seriously. And I think each institution, it's a wake-up call in terms of what Wells is going through. So that would be my answer to the question. I can certainly expand more, but for me, it is painful to see somebody like John Stump being grilled by Congress yesterday for 5 hours. Because the man, if you know him, he's a good guy. He's a godly man. And he doesn't want to lie. And so to see him be crucified up there was real painful. And it's painful for a lot of the employees that are enduring this right now. But the main thing is we have to figure out a way to rebuild the trust with all of our customers, with the public. All this will probably have an impact on the entire industry that will probably call for more regulation. So there's a balance. Regulation is needed, but there is a balance between how much is too much, but at the same time, each individual player within the industry has to take internal controls seriously to make sure things like what's going on right now doesn't happen.
That's very good. There's a gentleman in the back of the room that made a statement profoundly to me a number of years ago that he may not even remember. Stuart Morris said, "You can't legislate one's heart. You can't make someone do what their heart does not say they should do." So Paul, Darren, and Penn, if you would, with that same question, institutionalize and comment upon the importance of drivers in your cultures that really get you to the right place versus what an overlay of laws, rules, and regulations would do.
Okay, well, I will, like probably many of you, I mean, we have stated specific goals, and our employee handbook starts with do right, own it, embrace we, fresh thinking, welcome here. So the first one is do right. I mean, that's where we do the right thing. We believe you should put your customers' needs ahead of your own. This is the way to run a business. And by the way, it's more our enlightened self-interest than it is. If we're trying to sell somebody something that they don't want, then they're not going to be pleased with us over time, and we're going to lose more business. So, and it's not the right thing. So I think that we do a good job of that. I think the industry does. I think what you see is some rogue bad actors here and there. And let me just give you one example. The Bank Secrecy Act, which was mentioned, is a law that's been in place since the 70s. It requires banks to monitor their accounts to be sure we don't have drug dealers or international money launderers. We don't want drug dealers. We don't want money launderers. You know, we're looking for business, but we're not looking for that kind of business. And so a few years ago, a rogue unit at HSBC Bank would arrange for you to have your plane fly from Bogota to Switzerland and fly your $1 million or cash or $2 or $5 million in cash to Switzerland. Clearly, bad actors, okay? That was not the HSBC management at the top of the house. It was somebody that was making some big commissions on moving cash around in violation of numerous laws. They got caught, unfortunately not by the Comptroller of the Currency, by another agency, and then the Comptroller of the Currency goes before Congress, and they say, how could you let this happen?
Right.
So he goes out and says to all 2,700 national banks, we're raising the bar on BSA. So here we are, Community Bank. We have a satisfactory BSA exam in 2012. We're the same bank, 2013, we're not satisfactory. We go from 6 people in BSA to 25 people in BSA. 2 years later and millions of dollars later, Sunflower Grocery Store, because they cash checks for customers on Friday, are considered to be a high-risk account. We therefore have to charge them more, because even though they're 80 years old, it really could be a front for a drug dealer. You know, it could be just a hoax, right? And so regulation, do the right thing, bad actors, not bad actors, get caught up in the cost of trying to adjust for everything else that the bad actors are doing. So even great banks like Wells Fargo can have, make some mistakes, I guess. Certainly we all are human, and we all do that. But the struggle I have is trying to find the right balance. Find the bad actors should be punished. I mean, the mortgage industry, there were so many examples of egregious commission-based mortgage lenders putting people in houses that they couldn't afford. It's like it made no sense for the borrower or the bank.
That's right.
But it was happening in epic proportions. So that needed to be changed. I support the regulation there. But it's frustrating for us to spend, instead of $2 million a year, $5 million a year on Bank Secrecy Act when it really hasn't changed the risk in our company. And so that's the struggle, I think, that Congress doesn't really put a lot of credibility on banks right at the moment in particular, because we're kind of all considered to be weasels, and that's not exactly the case. So I don't know, Sam, if that goes to the heart of your question.
That is perfect. Well, let's shift gears with Darren and with Penn. As professionals, and I like the parallel, Darren, you as a official with the Federal Reserve, bank supervisors, monetary policy. Penn, you as the CEO of a major regional-sized financial institution. From your context, what are some of the more important challenges that are confronting the industry as a whole now, and then be more specific, some of the challenges that are confronting your organization?
Sure, Sam. And first of all, I'd be remiss if I did not follow my own organization's ethics by first stating the comments that I'll make today are mine and mine alone, and do not necessarily represent those of the system.
You didn't disappoint us, Darren.
So, yeah.
That same goes for me too. Sorry, I didn't say that.
So there we go. So Sam, I'm going to take a little bit more of a macro view on this,
Please.
if that's okay.
You bet.
So right now, as you can imagine, we're doing a lot of research into our economy and the global economy. And we really find 3 key drivers that are affecting our global economy. And they all start with D. The first is demographics. So if you look at all the major industrial countries around the world, every single one of them has declining demographics. That has major implications for social assistance programs, for economic growth, and for all the economic variables that go along with demographics, future workers. The second D that we get into is the end of the super debt cycle. So as we see this low growth, how do we escape? How do we get to escape velocity? Velocity is the economic term. And we find that so many countries have been increasing their debt over time. There's not a large capacity to spend our way out of that either. And so that's kind of what we're confronting right now in that macro sense in this world economy is what is the new normal. For the Federal Reserve and for monetary policy, it affects us, as you probably read in the paper almost every week, is what's the neutral rate for interest rates. And I can tell you that is a source of a very lengthy debate and research at the Federal Reserve in terms of trying to figure out for the long term, where will we end up? Historically, it had been around 4%. Now is it 3%? Is it less than 3%? And so I think those macro factors are going to have a huge impact on the banking industry, on margins, on profitability, and just growth in general.
Gotcha. Thank you. Ken?
Okay. Yeah, I think the challenge that is facing us right now is really many aspects. First of all is we're talking about regulation, right? So the bank, as a banker, as a good banker, you really have to pay attention to regulation. You see all the fine that all these banks has been getting from the government, right? They did something wrong. We see many examples recently. Deutsche Bank, 14 billion, right? And even a Taiwanese bank, Mega Bank, got fined for 180 million. So as a bank, we really has to be very careful to make sure that we have a very good compliance department, BSA department, and right now the hot button is cybersecurity. We have to really pay attention, recruit expertise to help us so that it won't be hacked, right? Many banks suffer loss. There's billions of loss, from cybersecurity. So, we also have that experience. So this is very, very important that we have to deal with that. And then another challenge is really finding a talent. I think banking industry has been kind of damaged, by the past reputation. So, I would say majority of the U.S. citizens look at a banker with a doubtful eye. Can we trust them? Right? Even though there's still, quite many honest bankers around. But in recruiting the talent, especially the younger generation, is a challenge. Because banking is a pretty dull industry, right? It's not like high tech. It's not innovative. So attracting talent, is continue to be an issue, with the banking industry.
Yep. Thank you very much. Let's shift gears really to the core of our topic: perspectives on ethical leadership, ethical values, especially from a Christian perspective. Embrace integrity, fairness, and compassion. Your heart. Share with us your personal convictions on these values and how they influence your leadership style in your organizations. And I'd like each of you to touch on that, starting with Andrew.
Okay. So I would say huge impact in terms of my faith in the Lord and how it has then influenced my leadership style. When I think back to where did I gain my first experience as a leader? It was actually in the church. So I was an individual contributor, and at Wells Fargo, didn't have any management experience, but I was a deacon in the church that I served with Ernest, in charge of the worship ministry. So if I had a guitar here, I'd love to lead us all in worship, but that's okay. And then all the different ministries being exposed to in terms of being a leader in the church. And the core, I would say, the core ingredient of what I learned as a leader in the church, it was all about discipleship. What can I do in terms of God use me to develop and help those around me grow in their faith of the Lord? So you take that basic principle, bring it then into the office, the workplace, and saying, how, as a leader, can I make my team better? Can I help them grow as bankers? Help them grow not only in their knowledge and be a subject matter expert in what we do, but teach them to win, teach them to strive for success, model for them, be in the trenches with them, because I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get down and dirty into the battlefield and help my team win. Help them believe that while we have these huge growth goals, that we can achieve them and more if we work together. So I would say just faith, the biblical truth that's in the Word, huge impact and influence in how I lead my people in the workplace.
That's excellent. And as we go to Paul, Darren and to Penn. Would one of you address that these extraordinary principles of integrity, fairness, and compassion doesn't mean easy, doesn't mean being a pushover. Please, guys, address it. I don't want to espouse my personal views, but please do.
Well, the question about faith as a leader, the first thing that came to my mind was my Aunt Patsy. She, a number of years ago, called me one day and said, I've got lung cancer, and I've got 6 months to live. And I said, Patsy, MD Anderson, tomorrow, we'll marshal resources, we're all over this. She lived in Yazoo City, Mississippi. And she said, no, if the Lord's ready for me, I'm ready to go. I've seen people fight it. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it just makes it worse. And I feel like if he's ready, then I'm ready. I was like, I'm trying to call myself a Christian. I think I have some faith, but you get that. That's faith as the leadership. That is a leadership model of faith. And she stuck by that. She spent her last days at home with her children and family and friends, and she went out with a great deal of grace and respect. And so in the workplace, it's different. I mean, our senior team, we're all, for the most part, Christians. I mean, and I think we take some comfort in that we share that in common. But we can't really, at work so much, it comes up. It's not anything that we hide from, but it's not something that we articulate on a regular basis. But it does kind of fall into what Sam's point about do the right thing. There's some bright lines about this is the wrong thing, and then there's a lot of gray areas. Mm-hmm. And where people get off track is where they get in the gray area, a little bit more gray, a little bit more gray. Now all of a sudden they've kind of lost their track of where they are, and they are outside of the lines. And that's where the controls, the policies, the procedures, the cross checks are so important. Thank you.
Right, Sam. Well, there's an old Indian proverb that I try to center my life around, and the proverb goes, the most beautiful things in the universe are the starry heavens above us and the sense of duty within us. And that proverb really resonates with me. And fortunately, my organization has values that map very well to my own. Personally, I like the Gospel of Luke, in particular, where they say, to whom much is given, much will be expected, and to whom much is entrusted, much will be demanded. And I think that really speaks to anyone, particularly anybody in banking, because much is required of us, and much is entrusted in us. And stenciled on our wall when you walk in to the Fed on the left, we have a quote from FDR, and it's not the Gospel of Luke, but I relate it to that. And the quote is from his very first fireside chat. And in that chat, FDR said, there's an element in our financial system more important than currency, more important than gold, and that is the confidence of the people. And to me, that relates to that trust, that bond that we have with the American public. And then on the other wall, we have a quote that talks about our belief that the Houston economy is one of the great economic engines of the world, and that our mission is to serve those financial needs. And that gets at servant leadership for me. And that's another tenet that I try to lead with, and that I think our highest calling is serving others. And you can do that in so many capacities in your job. And that is something that we try to institute as well. In terms of not being a pushover, in terms of integrity, it is hard, Sam. And economists have a term called marginal cost, and it's really hard to have integrity 100% of the time, but I think that's what integrity calls for. You have to be binary. You either have integrity or you don't. I think one of the great examples of a failure there was Barings Bank back in 1995. Right. There was a rogue trader. He made a very minor mistake, and he tried to cover his tracks by trading and putting it in an unscrutinized account. and those errors and those mistakes kept adding up. Before long, he had lost over $1 billion for the bank. This merchant bank that had been around over 200 years failed, and 1,200 people lost their job.
Pam.
I think it's a great responsibility to be a good banker, experienced bank leader, and I believe that a good leader, is not made overnight. It's developed over a long period of time. And for me, I'm fortunate, to become a Christian when I was in college, and actually I taught Sunday school, adult Sunday school for over 30 years, and that really helped me, because in order to prepare for the Sunday school, you really need to read a lot of Bible, understand God's teaching, God's work, and kind of that daily influence helped me to build up my belief, my faith, and my principle. So that really helped me in my career, I do feel I have a calling from God, to work in the banking industry. I don't know where I will be at that time, but I clearly see God's hand guiding me, so that I can have an impact on our bank, on our community, and with our customers, so that they can see that ethical leaders, ethical bank is very important, and I thank God for that opportunity.
Thank you. As you can hear and literally feel, that there is a common thread that radiates and runs through almost each comment that these men are making, and that's humility and service to others, recognizing that particularly as those who serve clients and constituents, they are never any better than the success that their customer base is achieving. One personal life philosophy of mine is you do business with those that you trust. You don't trust them, you don't do business with them. So as we delve a little bit deeper, there's nothing more important to us than those who we love and those who love us. So if you would share your personal philosophy and your personal walk with how you pursue and achieve a work-life balance that is where it should be. And as I look across this room, I am touched by the young people, the students in this room, who will literally walk in our shoes, will replace us. So talk to us about this work-life balance spectrum and how you achieve it. Andrew.
Okay. It's hard.
It is hard.
But that's where you have to seek the Lord for wisdom. So for me, I manage half the country for my line of business, starting from Texas all the way through the East Coast. Have 8 different offices that I have to spend time. On top of that, I got to engage with my kids. I got 7 kids that need my attention. On top of that, I'm also one of the servant leaders for this new church plant that we started in Charlotte. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's why I'm in Charlotte. Not so much the job, but God's call for my life and my family's life to move from LA to Charlotte because of this church plant. So where do I find the time? Seek the Lord, and somehow He brings it all together. He enlarges the time or helps me be more efficient, more effective with the time that I have. There's not much of wasting time in terms of my daily schedule, and there's only limited bandwidth. So somehow God is impacting my life to be able to create time. But I'll probably work 60 hours a week, put in 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday.
Don't be scared by that, students.
That doesn't include travel time, and also time checking emails. But come Friday, I really consider my weekends family time. So I make the personal choice of not doing client events over the weekend. I won't take a customer out to a Panthers game on Sunday because that's my family time. Mm-hmm. It's also time for me to engage in ministry. So that's where my second job starts, is on the weekend. But I try to bring all the family with me in terms of engaging a lifestyle of serving the Lord in the church. So putting all that aside, then in terms of a view of people who are just, especially young ones, or those just graduating college, entering into the workforce, I would have to admit that, so if you start out as an analyst or an entry-level position, there is going to be the perspective of one, okay, you're single, you don't have a family, or you don't have kids. There's probably going to be an expectation upon you to put in a lot of hours. Is it right? No. Is it real? Yes. Because when you're young and you're trying to make a name for yourself, build a reputation from zero, you want to be able to at least control your controllables. And that is where you spend your time, how you spend your time. And so you want to not be in the office 60 hours a week just because you just want to be there and have nothing to do. But you have to work smart and work hard. You certainly want to exude a presence that you are a hard worker. And if there is a deal that has a deadline of tomorrow, that there would be an expectation. If you want to set yourself up, say, hey, I'm a hard worker, I'm passionate about my job, I want to help the team win, that I'm going to stay here tonight until whenever the time requires that we get this deal done as a team. You want to be viewed as responsible, reliable, and we can trust you to help carry the ball for the team. So I say there's a little bit of that. And I would lastly then comment that part of the challenge is sometimes it's a little bit more challenging to get that kind of attitude from the millennials. Yeah. There's a different way, and that's what, as Pin was talking earlier, the challenge of the industry in terms of finding the talent and connecting, finding the talent, attracting the talent in the millennial side, but once we have the talent, how to connect and speak the language of millennial, because there is a little bit, what we're experiencing is a little bit more different perspective from the millennial generation about where they want to spend their time. So for example, we've hired a couple analysts, and they'll say, they'll probably, sometimes their natural tendency is, okay, at 5 o'clock, we're going to go home because I got to go to the gym. And even though there may be an important deal, but I got to protect my gym time. We're like, okay, really? So there's that challenge, and that's fine. That's your prerogative. But are you gonna, if you have that mentality, are you gonna stand apart from all the other analysts in the team as one who's like I mentioned before, works hard, is responsible, is reliable? It'll be more challenging. So there's a balance there.
That's right.
And there is, again, it's reality. It's that's the culture that corporate culture there is. But at the end of the day, me as a leader, I do exude and promote a healthy work-life balance. I don't want people coming in for the sake of coming in, especially if they have family engagements or such. So everyone's different, but yeah, it's important.
But Paul, Darren, and Penn, if you would also incorporate, because we're again touched by the number of students that are in this room, but as you address that, also incorporate words of wisdom, counsel, advice that you could give to them as they are pursuing their life journey professionally.
We have a saying at our shop, we work a lot of half days. That's 7 to 7. So it's a lot of hours. It is a challenge. I think we do understand. I mean, I've worked a lot of hours. I've coached Post-Oak Little League Baseball. I've been at my kids' events. These days with iPhones and BlackBerries, it really is a lot easier because you can stay connected. In terms of advice, we do a quarterly earnings call, an all-hands call with all of our bankers. And just as one example, on the last call, I closed the call with advice, and I'd offer all of you the same advice. And the advice is really simple. It's call your mom. Call your mom. Someone told me about 7 or 8 years ago, you should call your mom. How often do you call my mom? I said, well, once a week, maybe twice. So why don't you call her every day? Well, I don't know. I guess I could. I talk to my mom a couple of times a day now. It's one of the best things I've ever done. My dad's gone. I recognize not everybody has a mom, okay? So maybe it's not your mom, maybe it's your uncle or your kid or your, best friend. But I think that in everything we're doing, it is easy to get caught up and kind of lose sight of the things that are important. So while we work a lot of half days, we do insists people take vacation, and we don't let them walk away from their vacation unused, and find the right balance. And what I find is it kind of goes in spurts. There's periods of time where you're really, really on task, and you miss a few family dinners, and then it evens out somewhere on the other side on a vacation. So, Darren.
All right. Well, now I'm going to have to go home and call my mom. So.
Me too. Man.
Well, I probably fall in the same boat, and I agree. In different stages of life, I think the work-life balance is different, and technology certainly has, I would say, made it easier, and in some cases more difficult. Fortunately, I truly did marry my better half, and she never lets me forget when our first child was born. I'm going to date myself here. I had a beeper so she could get a hold of me at any time.
Oh.
And we were in the delivery room, and my beeper went off 3 times with my boss calling for some routine questions. And finally she looked at me and said, if you don't put that away, you're going to be giving birth to that beeper. So I put it away, believe me. But I never forgot how that made me feel or made my wife feel at that moment. And so I made it my resolve that as I moved up the chain, we would be very cognizant about our work-life balance. And we still don't have it right. It's a work in progress. But one of the things that we try to do, both professionally and then in my personal life, is prioritize and say, what truly are our priorities? If we have 24 priorities, it's as good as having 0. And if we have 1 extra hour in a day, how do we want to spend that? Either at work or at home. It's usually not watching TV at home. It's doing something with one of my daughters. But this is one area where I really think the millennials are going to help us get it right. So I think my generation took the pendulum and swung it one way. I think millenniums are swinging it back the other way. And I'm optimistic we'll end up somewhere in the middle.
Very good.
I think living a balanced life, to me, is the most important thing. And it's like running a marathon, right? If you're running a marathon, you have to be very disciplined, right? You have to pace yourself, right? You don't want to run too fast at a period of your life. So you have to continue to be disciplined. And for every human being, I think we have to look at 3 aspects, right? Your physical health, right? Your emotional health, and your spiritual health. And to me, it's very important to balance the 3 of them. So I work 70 hours average a week, sometimes even more. So there are a lot of half days. But I'm very satisfied with my balanced life because I do exercise 5 days a week, right? Every dinner, after dinner, I will take a half hour, 45 minutes walk with my wife. It's good quality time that we can exercise and share. At the same time, I do daily devotion every day. That is, actually the source of strength that you can get the wisdom from God and obtain God's guidance on how to do your work more efficiently. And you attend church, right? You have a social life, you have church life. So you cover all your physical, emotion, and spiritual health. And to me, that's very important. So you want to look at what's more important, right? You want to, win the marathon at the end, right? So I think we have to think of what is more important in your life and have a balanced life. Make sure that you cover your physical, emotion, and spiritual health all the time.
Exactly. That's excellent. It is your time now. But before we say that, this is to the young people. Always know that you will never be a split soul. You'll never be 2 people. You don't have a separate professional and a personal life. You're one person. And you live your life in a way that my grandmother used to say, someone is always watching. So choose your friends wisely. Don't associate with the riffraff. And remember that someone is always watching you, professionally or personally. It's one you. It's not Sam Golden, the person that his family loves and he loves, and someone else at work. You are one person guided by a common set of values. Questions from the audience? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I can't see who it is. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got you.
Okay, do you guys by any chance do any? I assume you guys have to crunch numbers because y'all work in the financial sector, so I have to do that for my side business too. Except my workflow for crunching for organizing my data consists of putting all my transactions in a central database using Microsoft Access, and that's for the beginning of time, and then I export from certain sets of data from Access, such as certain date ranges, into a spreadsheet software known as Microsoft Excel, and for purposes of generating reports. And I started doing this last night, actually, and so I'm doing a business management major, and I'm already applying my knowledge from these various classes, especially my accounting class, to my business. With that in mind, how does this workflow I've described compare to the workflow you guys use for organizing data and crunching numbers?
It's extremely relevant. I'll answer that. Exceedingly relevant. I guarantee you I can use Access and Excel as well as you can. I don't do it every day. Because I
cannot.
because I don't have to. I have a team of folks your age and some a little bit older than you who manipulate all kinds of data. But I learned, again, from that grandmother who lived to be 96, you don't have to do everything yourself, but you darn sure better know that those who are doing it right. And so what you are doing in the manipulation of data, hugely important. I'm a bank consultant, and so we're working with these guys all the time. And I've got a team of PhD quants that work for me who are brilliant, a lot smarter than I am, that I can't do what they do. But I know enough about what they do to make sure that it's practical, rational, and that it makes business sense, and it's adding value to these 4 people that we are serving on an ongoing basis. So get real good at what you're doing, and I'll give you my business card, and I'll hire you.
It's an important skill set that you're developing. Yes.
Others.
Here's one up here.
Right here.
Sam, good job on the panel that you're doing there. Gentlemen, thank you for taking your time out today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Darren, I no longer work for a regulated entity now that I'm retired, but I could feel your aura all the way over here. Would you guys take a second and address one thing, considering the number of HBU students we've got in the room? I'm on the Board of Trustees, guys, so I'm doing this for you. But there's a misconception oftentimes with the younger folks that when they leave an organization, they frequently will download onto the thumb drives a lot of the stuff and take it with them.
Absolutely.
And there have been a lot of, including firms that I've been with, that have taken legal action against other people and against the people for doing that. Address that. That's a really important topic for folks now.
Thank you for that question. And guys, when you address that, also address the whole issue of one of the most critical risks that we confront today, and that's cyber protection, cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Oh, I can take the lead on that,
Please do.
Sam. So if you look at the Federal Reserve's heat map right now, there's one sector that's glowing lava red, and that's cybersecurity. So on any given day, we repel over 5 million hacking attempts across the Federal Reserve's backbone. And our FedWire system, which you may have heard of, we transfer about $3 trillion a day over that FedWire system. So it's absolutely critical that we keep and maintain the integrity of our IT system. So you can not imagine the lengths that we go to ensure the integrity of our IT architecture. Insider threat is a huge issue for us right now, and the Federal Reserve is not immune to that. We are actually actively prosecuting some employees right now, in I can't say where, other offices, and they may have been developers. In some cases, they may not have known the risk. In some cases, they may have. But I appreciate you raising this point to our students because this is going to be an ongoing issue. It's one you can be criminally prosecuted for if you are downloading information against your organization's guidelines. So
We just had it happen. A guy left, came in on a Saturday, downloaded a whole bunch of information, information that didn't even pertain to him and his market that he was in. He goes across the street, I mean, we know 10 seconds after he leaves. By the way, I mean, this is very tightly surveilled. This is not like you can leave and with information and nobody noticed that. You know, unusual for him to be in the office on a Saturday, and it was 90 miles of bad road for him. I really felt sorry for the guy because it was a stupid mistake. He's not a bad person. Good people make mistakes. People deserve second chances. But he's going to have to pay us over $35,000 in costs for all the work we had to do to go to Yahoo and be sure that our database wasn't compromised, wasn't out in cyberspace. And so we were able to do that. And his new employer is not very impressed with this move at all, because that's not what they're looking for in terms of the people that they're employing. So,
Yeah, I would just add that in the banking industry, we talked about talent being an issue. And so there's quite a bit of activity where different banks will try to recruit from one another, because we believe that if we hire a banker who has a portfolio of X amount of customers, who has a great relationship with each of those customers, that if we hire that person, then we could have a better chance of starting relationships with that banker's customers. So with that as the backdrop, then there is that temptation for that banker then to bring that knowledge with them into the new organization. But that's the wrong thing to do. And so for cases like what Paul just said, there's not only a legal consequence, but if you do that, you are really burning the bridge with that institution. And you never know. The grass sometimes is not greener on the other side. So you go to that new institution, and you're like, dang, this is not what I signed up for. Can I go back to my old bank? And if you've done that, or if you've even taken one file, or made some photocopies, forget about thumb drive, but you can just see that, oh, you have all these files on your desk when this person left. That why take the risk of harming your own reputation amongst the industry, as well as burning your bridge in flames with the institution that you just work for? The best thing is always keep your bridges intact, and therefore leave amicably, even if you go to a competing institution. But you can still do it tactfully, you can still do it respectfully, and so taking information with you is the wrong thing to do.
just to add, the grass is not always greener, and if you water the grass where you are, it might be pretty green.
And call your mom, too.
We have time for one more question, and I'll take it. I've gone to you once, so let me go to this gentleman right here.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for giving me a chance to ask the questions. You gentlemen talked about what's happening in the financial industry, especially Wells Fargo, Deutsche Bank. And you know, most of probably all developing countries look up to American financial system to build their infrastructure and learn from the institution. So you being a leaders in the banking industry, what are you doing to influence the system here in U.S. to bring the trust of a customer like us and also these countries that are looking up to you? And the second question is, what you going to tell these people, these third world countries that they are trying to set up an institution like in the U.S., what to do in the future? Thank you.
Two great questions.
I'll comment. One thing that we do is we participate with the American Bankers Association, the Texas Bankers Association. We're actively engaged with our legislatures and regulators about how do we deal with these issues. Again, most bankers are not bad actors. They want healthy, prudent regulation, protection for clients, but yet, the ability for the bank to make a nickel. So a lot of our activity would be, in collaboration and sharing ideas with folks like that.
I would just say that, you have to decentralize the influence. So meaning that if you're, and that's why you have what Paul mentioned earlier, Darren mentioned earlier, Pin, each bank, each institution has its own culture. And I can say that just by listening to, my co-panelists here, the culture is going to be founded on doing the right thing. There's a commonality. I don't know if you guys caught that. And so everyone has to be that leader in the organization to be able to live it and influence those around you to do the right thing. Because that's how we define a leader, at least within Wells Fargo, is that a leader connects the customer to the vision of doing the right thing for the customer, but a leader also influences others to do the right thing. And so managing reputation, I know for the bank, for like Wells Fargo, reputation risk is huge. And so you have to manage your reputation risk as best as possible. And it impacts us as, I can't tell you how many times in terms of trying to do start a relationship with a new company, that there is a lot of focus on reputation risk. What's the background results of that company yielding? Has there been a lawsuit? What's the reputation of that business? Let alone the financial profile. Let's say that, it's a strong financial profile, but if there is news, if they're being investigated by the DOJ, or if there's something sketchy with that company, we are encouraged and guided with a strong push to don't do business with that company, because that could endanger the reputation of the overall organization. So managing reputation risk, I think, is huge. Clearly, we needed, we're working on that ourselves right now.
Well, we applaud you as the audience. Thank you so very much. Please join me in thanking Andrew, Paul, Darren, and Penn. They've done an exceptional job.
Thank you, gentlemen. Paul, you said at the beginning, you said, I'm not used to this witnessing thing, but I think you all will agree that what was done today was a great witness for all to share your Christian values and how that affects your personal and professional workplace. One of the questions about how do I integrate this technology and that kind of thing, as an educator, as the dean of the College of Business, when I look at what we give you, we're going to give you those technical skills. And you're going to learn Microsoft Excel, you're going to learn Microsoft Access, but 20 years from now, I don't know what that technology will be. These gentlemen all remember when it was imperative to have Lotus 1, 2, 3, and they know what that is.
Absolutely.
Students have no idea what I'm talking about.
When Sam started, they had abacus.
But what I can tell you that will stand you in good stead, no matter how long you are in the professional workforce, is these Christian values that are reinforced through events like this today.
Amen.
And that's really what makes an HBU education different. We're proud to share these Christian values with you, and know that truth, if you shine your light in the workplace, will serve you well no matter what technology does. Amen. So as a token of our appreciation, Ernest has a gift for you all.
All right.
We want to thank you for coming and sharing with us today. We're very excited about that.
These are not boxed lunches.
Thank you. Thank you so kindly.
And
Appreciate
I will also remind the audience that on February 3rd, Friday, February 3rd, Stuart Morris Jr. will be speaking at the next CCB Luncheon. We're excited about that event. So thank you all for coming. One more round of applause for the panel, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.